this yarn into a hot water bath. And because we are dyeing with black walnut today, we do not need a mordant. It has enough tannins in it to act as a, as a mordant, or the ability for the dye to stick to the yarn. Usually you need a mordant first to get that to stick, but in the case of black walnut, you do not. So I thought it was a really good dye source to start with to keep things even simpler. So this is going to soak in this hot water for about an hour. And now that it's in the water, I will not be agitating it. So I'm careful not to felt it. So I thought I would just show you around my dye studio. It is nothing special. It is just our barn. We have one room in the barn that is dedicated to my dye studio, and there is a wood stove if I want to do some wood stove dyeing. I just have this basic wood shelf where I keep all of my bare yarns on. I have two microwaves, so I can do microwave dyeing, which we will get into at some point. Then I have the most important part of everything, which is my stainless steel. Well, I have more down here and more over there. My stainless steel pots and pans, and this induction cooker thinger that I got on Amazon. It was really inexpensive and works so well for dyeing. And you just have to use something like, well, I don't know, I think maybe you can use copper too, but stainless steel definitely. If I put a different type of pot on there, it will not start up at all, so it just doesn't work. But anyway, it's best to dye with stainless steel or copper if you can. Anyway. And what else? Oh, in here, this is just a an old armoire that we got from Joe's late mom, and in here I keep some mordants. So citric acid is one mordant that I use, and this alum is another mordant that I use sometimes. But in here I just keep, like, I have a bunch of coffees back there, and just a bunch of dyes. You can dye with turmeric. This is some more black walnut. Oh, this is where I got those from, Star West Botanicals. Yeah, so, and then in the bottom I just have some different modifiers. You can modify with salt and baking soda and chalk. And then in that drawer under there I just keep a bunch of different miscellaneous items. So that's really handy. But yeah, this is really, and then I just have this, try to get back here, this table that I can work from as well. I love it. It suits the purpose that I need it for. But don't get caught up in thinking you have to have all this fancy equipment to start, because you really, really don't. I got my pots at thrift stores, so you don't have to invest a lot of money. I did buy a very large pot at Job Lots, but it was inexpensive. So, and that's for when I do large batches. But this size I have there, that size is just right. Alright, so now that we have our dye, we're going to let this set for at least an hour and just let it cool. So however long it takes to cool, I'm going to leave the lid off and then I'll check back with you. Okay, the dye bath is cool, and now I am going to add my yarn. So I just took the yarn out of the water, and here we go. You can see that that's a light tan. Right now. And then we're going to add, I think I'm just going to add 2 this time. It's a little bit lighter than I was thinking it would be. So we'll just do 2. And then I'm going to turn this back on, bring to a boil, and then we're going to let it simmer for about 30 minutes. So I'm going to do that same temp 30 minutes. Okay. Put the top on. And I'm going to let it do its thing, and then I'll come back in and check on it. Okay, let's check it out. A little bit hard to see what we've got because of the reflection, but I'm going to try to lift up both skeins at once so you can get a good idea. So yeah, I would definitely say that that is, it's like a khaki kind of a light tan, and I think we can do better. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add more walnut to this bath. I'll take out the yarn first, set it aside, make sure it stays wet, and then I will make another pouch of walnut and add more and see if we can get a stronger dye, because it looks like there is still dye in the pot, but I would rather get a more saturated color this time. So natural dyeing, there is a lot of trial and error. I don't do any of it very scientifically as far as like accurately measuring down to the gram. It's just not my style, and more power to you if that's the way you like to do things. I understand that that's really helpful sometimes, especially for making repeatable colors. But for my dye experiments, we are just going to go with instinct and knowledge and a little bit of wisdom. So as I mentioned, I used black walnut hulls, but you can dye, and it's preferable actually if you can collect your own black walnuts. You'd want to do that while they are green, so you gather them in the fall, and you'll get different colors if you dye with all parts of the walnut. If you want deeper, darker shades, just don't use the hulls. I've seen instructions all over the place on the amount to use. I've seen everything from use 1 walnut per every 20 grams of yarn, and I've also seen 1 walnut for every 100 grams. So that's a really big difference. So I just, as you saw, play around with the amounts until I get a shade that I like. It depends on what I'm looking for, actually. And always remember to use any leftover dye that you have. So sometimes all of your dye will be exhausted, which means it will be all put into the yarn, but other times there's too much dye per yarn ratio and you will have leftovers. I always add my skeins, my new skeins, into that dye, and you'd be surprised at the range of colors that you can get from just one dye bath. We've had the yarn in the dye bath now for 40 minutes. And as you can see, that is a beautiful, I don't want to blow it out, but that is a beautiful shade of walnut brown. It's gorgeous. Steam is everywhere. But yeah, if you look at that, you can see the difference between that and this lighter one here that we did before. And then this is the original color. It's like a creamy white. But ooh, this is so pretty. I absolutely love it. I can imagine a complete jumper in that color. Good morning. It is the next day, and I just wanted to show you the yarn once it's dry. So here's the darker one, and it's blowing out a lot. but it came out really nice. I like this color, and then here's the lighter one. And in some light, the lighter one looks pink, which is really cool. Here you can see them together. You can see the difference in them. And let me just show you what I do next. So here's my scissors. So I'm going to cut, of course, the blue string first, and then I'm going to go to this one and just cut right across that knot, and then you can simply pull that out. It'll come out just like that. Do the same thing for all of those strings. Tear it off and pull it out. And this one, this was the main one that I was telling you about, which you would never remove before dyeing because you'd have a tangled mess. But let me get that one off. And there should be one more in this skein. Just kind of hiding. Here it is. And pull it out. And now I'm going to just kind of stretch this out, and then I'm going to start spinning it in my hands until it feels nice and tight, and then I'm going to put it under my chin and then push that other end through push one end through the other, and then I kind of tidy up any loose strands until we have a fairly neat hank. Isn't that beautiful? I love it so much. I love dyeing with walnut. And then I will go ahead and I will finish up the rest of these. I'll check right back in with you. Good morning. It is the next day, and yesterday I decided I would try to double the walnut dye bath just to see if I could get a darker brown, because this was, if you remember, the darkest brown that we've gotten so far, and I was hoping to get something darker. However, these two I left in the dye bath overnight after they were steaming, and they're really not darker. They're about the same. You could probably tell that, although they're soaking wet right now, drying. So I believe I got the darkest dye or dye color that I'm going to get out of that walnut. So I just thought that might be interesting. And yeah, I have now added some mini skeins because there's a lot of dye that's not exhausted yet, so that means there's still quite a bit of color left in the bath. So I am going to try to get all of that color out, so I am dyeing some mini skeins. I should also mention to you that natural dyes come up quite differently on pure wool yarn versus, say, a sock yarn with 75% merino and 25% nylon in them, because there's something about the pure wool that they always seem to be a lighter, more muted shade. Chances are if I dyed this on a traditional superwash sock yarn base, it would be more intense. So that's something to keep in mind when you're dyeing in the future.
hope you've enjoyed learning how to dye with black walnut. As you can see, you can experiment with different amounts of dye material to different amounts of yarn to get different shades. All it takes is a little practice. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.